There is a moment late at night when the house finally goes quiet and the noise of the day stops covering up the ache underneath. When a person simply sits alone with their pain and wonders if anyone in heaven is still listening. If that moment is yours tonight, if you are holding a body that hurts, a heart that is tired, or a hope that has grown thin and fragile, then this prayer was written for you. It was written for the version of you that does not always show up in daylight, the one who cries quietly, who prays in fragments, who wonders if healing is still possible. Saint Carlo Acutis was once a teenager just like the young people who feel unseen today. An ordinary boy who loved video games and friends and pizza, and yet he became someone who now stands close to Christ, ready to carry the prayers of the suffering straight to the altar of God. So take a breath, let your shoulders drop, and let these words become your own, spoken slowly, spoken honestly, spoken as if someone who truly understands is sitting right beside you. Dear Saint Carlo Acutis, beloved friend of the young and the wounded, I come to you tonight with a heart that feels heavy, carrying burdens I can barely name, carrying wounds that have not yet closed, carrying a hope that flickers like a candle in the wind, but somehow still refuses to go out. I come to you, not because I am strong, but because I am tired. I come to you not because I have everything figured out, but because I am lost in ways that only God can understand, and I believe that you, who walk this earth so briefly, yet so brightly, can walk beside me now and carry my prayer up to the throne of the Father who never sleeps and never forgets his children. You were only 15 when you left this world, Carlo, and yet in those short years you burned with a love for Christ that outshines the lives of many who lived to be 100. You called the Eucharist your highway to heaven, and I believe you are still traveling that highway even now, carrying the prayers of the broken-hearted, the sick, the frightened, and the forgotten straight into the arms of Jesus. So tonight, I place my own broken heart into your hands, trusting that you know exactly what to do with it, because you always knew how to bring people closer to God without ever making them feel small or unworthy. I am asking you for healing, Carlo. Not the kind of healing that simply hides pain beneath a smile, but the kind that reaches down into the deepest root of the wound and pulls it out with gentleness and truth. There are things inside me that have been broken for so long that I have almost forgotten what it felt like to be whole. There are hurts from childhood that still ache when I least expect them. There are wounds from people who were supposed to love me but instead left scars. There are physical pains that doctors cannot fully explain, and emotional pains that no medicine seems to touch. I bring all of it to you now. Every bruise, every scar, every silent tear I have cried in the dark when no one else was watching. Please, Carlo, carry these wounds to Jesus, the divine physician, and ask him to touch me the way he touched the sick who reached for the hem of his garment. I do not need a miracle that the whole world will see. I only need the quiet miracle of a heart that can breathe again, a body that can rest again, a soul that can trust again. I think of how you suffered, Carlo, in those final days of your short life, how leukemia ravaged your young body, how pain and weakness took hold of you, and yet you offered every bit of that suffering for the Pope, for the Church, for sinners like me who so desperately need grace. You did not waste your pain. You transformed it into a gift. Teach me, please, how to do the same. Teach me how to hold my own suffering, not as a curse, but as something that, united to the cross of Christ, can become a prayer more powerful than words. I do not always understand why suffering exists, why illness comes, why hearts break, why bodies fail, why dreams die before they ever had the chance to live. But I believe, even in my confusion, even in my anger, even in my exhaustion, that God can bring life out of what feels like death. So take my suffering, Carlo, small and human as it is, and lay it gently at the feet of Jesus, the way you laid your own. I am also asking you for hope, dear Carlo, because there are days when hope feels like a luxury I cannot afford. There are mornings when I wake up and the weight of the world presses down on my chest before I have even opened my eyes. There are nights when the darkness outside seems to seep into the darkness inside, and I wonder if things will ever get better, if I will ever feel joy again, if this heaviness is simply who I am now. You knew, even as a teenager, that this world is not our final home, that there is something greater waiting for us, something so beautiful that Saint Paul once said, "No eye has seen, and no ear has heard what God has prepared for those who love him." Help me to believe that too, Carlo. Help me to lift my eyes beyond the pain of today and catch even a glimpse of the hope that you carried so joyfully in your own heart. You used to say that all people are born as originals, but many die as photocopies, and I do not want to die as a photocopy of despair. I want to live and die as the person God created me to be, someone who trusts him even in the fog, someone who keeps walking even when the road disappears ahead. Restore me, Carlo. That is the third thing I ask of you tonight, restoration, because so much in my life feels broken beyond repair, relationships that have crumbled, trust that has been shattered, dreams that have been buried under disappointment, health that has slipped away little by little, faith that has grown thin and fragile like old paper. I know that God is a God who restores, who rebuilds ruins, who makes rivers flow in the desert, who takes what is dead and breathes life back into it. I have read of Ezekiel standing in the valley of dry bones, watching as God knits sinew and flesh back onto bones that had long since lost all hope of living again. I feel like those bones sometimes, Carlo, dry and forgotten, and far from anything that looks like life. But I believe that the same God who spoke life into that valley can speak life into me. Please ask him to do it. Please ask him to breathe on the dry places of my heart and my body and my relationships until they rise up again, alive and whole. I remember reading about how much you loved the poor, Carlo, how you would use your allowance and your time to help those who had nothing, how you saw Christ in every person who was suffering or overlooked. I ask you now to see Christ in me too, in my suffering, in my need, in my quiet desperation, and to love me the way you loved those you served on earth. I am not asking for anything extravagant. I am asking for the ordinary mercy that you showed to ordinary people, the kind of love that notices someone forgotten and refuses to let them stay invisible. I have felt invisible for a long time, Carlo. I have felt like my pain does not matter, like my prayers get lost somewhere between my lips and heaven. Please remind me, in whatever way God allows, that I am seen, that I am known, that I am loved beyond anything I can measure. There are people I carry in my heart as I pray to you tonight, Carlo. People I love who are also hurting, also sick, also searching for hope in the middle of their own storms. I think of the ones who are fighting illnesses that frighten them, whose bodies are weary from treatments and tests and endless waiting rooms. I think of the ones whose minds are heavy with anxiety and depression, who wake up already exhausted by the thought of facing another day. I think of the ones who have lost someone they loved and are learning, slowly and painfully, how to breathe without them. I think of the ones whose marriages are fracturing, whose families are divided, whose homes no longer feel safe. I think of the ones who have wandered far from God and do not even remember the way back. I lift every single one of them to you now, Carlo, and I ask you to carry their names, spoken and unspoken, to the feet of Jesus, just as you carry mine. You loved computer programming, Carlo, and you used your gifts to build a website cataloging Eucharistic miracles from around the world, wanting people everywhere to see and believe in the real presence of Christ. I think about how intentional you were, even as a boy, about using every talent you had for the glory of God. Help me to do the same with whatever gifts I have been given, even the ones buried under fear or self-doubt or shame. Help me to believe that my life still has purpose, that healing is not just about feeling better, but about becoming someone who can pour love back out into a world that so desperately needs it. Restore in me not only my body and my heart, but also my sense of purpose, my belief that I was made for something more than simply surviving each day. I think of your mother, Carlo, and how she has spoken about your deep faith, your daily Mass, your love for the Rosary and Eucharistic adoration. I want to have a faith like yours, so simple and so strong, so unshaken by the noise of the world. Teach me how to pray the way you prayed, not out of obligation but out of love, not as a chore but as the very air I breathe. When I kneel before the Blessed Sacrament, help me to see what you saw, the living, breathing love of Jesus Christ, waiting patiently for me, waiting to heal me, waiting to hold me. I confess that my faith has grown weak in seasons of suffering. I confess that there have been moments when I doubted whether God even hears me anymore. Forgive me for those doubts, Carlo, and pray for me, that my faith may be rekindled like a fire that had almost gone out, but is given new breath and roars back to life. I ask you especially for healing in my body tonight, wherever pain lives, wherever sickness has taken hold, wherever weakness has settled in and made itself at home. If it is God's will, let this healing be complete and immediate. If it is God's will that healing comes slowly, through the ordinary means of doctors and medicine and time, then let it come steadily, without setback, without despair along the way. And if there is a suffering that God asks me to carry for a while longer, then give me the grace to carry it the way you carried yours, Carlo, with courage, with trust, with a quiet joy that the world cannot understand, but that comes only from union with Christ. I ask you for healing in my mind as well, for the anxious thoughts that spiral late at night, for the fears that whisper lies about my worth, for the memories that replay themselves like a film I cannot turn off. Quiet those thoughts, Carlo. Ask Jesus to speak peace over my mind, the way he once spoke peace over the storm on the Sea of Galilee, saying simply, "Be still." I need that stillness. I need that peace that surpasses understanding, the kind that guards the heart and the mind, the kind that Saint Paul wrote about from a prison cell, somehow full of joy even in chains. If Paul could know that peace in chains, surely I can know it in my own smaller sufferings. If only I let go and let God hold what I have been trying so hard to hold on my own. I ask you for healing in my relationships, Carlo, for the friendships that have grown distant, for the family bonds that have been strained by misunderstanding or hurt, for the love that once felt so easy and now feels so complicated. Help me to forgive where I need to forgive. Help me to be forgiven where I have caused pain. Help me to build bridges where walls have gone up. And where bridges cannot be built, Help me to find peace even in the distance, trusting that God is still working, still weaving good even from broken threads. I ask you for restoration in my faith community, wherever it feels fractured or cold, wherever people have hurt each other in the name of religion, wherever the church herself feels wounded by scandal or division. You loved the church so deeply, Carlo, even as a boy, and you believed in her holiness, even while knowing she is made up of sinful people trying, often failing, to reflect the face of Christ. Help me to love the church the way you did, not blindly, but faithfully, choosing to stay and pray and serve rather than walk away in bitterness. Ask Jesus to heal his church, to purify her, to restore her beauty in the eyes of a world that has grown skeptical and wounded by her failures. I think about how young you were, Carlo, and yet how much wisdom you carried. You knew that sadness looking at the sky is very different from sadness looking at a screen, that joy comes from looking upward, toward heaven, toward eternity, rather than being consumed by the endless distractions of this world. Teach me to look upward again. Teach me to lift my eyes from my problems long enough to remember that there is a God who reigns above every storm, who sees every tear, who has not abandoned me even when it feels like he has gone silent. Restore my sense of wonder, Carlo. Restore in me the ability to see beauty even in small things. A sunrise, a child's laughter, the quiet comfort of someone who simply sits beside me in my pain. Let these small mercies become reminders that God is still present, still active, still weaving healing into my story even when I cannot yet see the full picture. I bring to you, Carlo, all my unspoken prayers, the ones I do not even have words for, the ones that live only as a heaviness in my chest or a silent ache behind my eyes. You understand, I think, what it means to suffer without always having the words to explain it. Please translate my silence into prayer. Please carry what I cannot articulate straight to the heart of Jesus, who knows me more intimately than I know myself, who counts every hair on my head, who catches every tear I cry, who has never once turned his face away from me even in my darkest hour. I ask you to pray for the doctors and nurses and caregivers who tend to the sick, that God would give them wisdom, patience, and compassion, that their hands would become instruments of healing, guided by something greater than their own skill. I ask you to pray for the families who sit in hospital waiting rooms tonight, terrified and exhausted, clinging to hope by only a thread. I ask you to pray for the children who are sick, the way you were sick, that they would know, even in their suffering, that they are deeply loved, deeply precious, deeply seen by a God who holds them close. I ask you to pray for the elderly who feel forgotten in their final years, that they would know dignity and comfort and the nearness of Christ as they approach the end of their earthly journey. I ask you to pray for anyone tonight who feels so overwhelmed by pain that they cannot find a reason to keep going, that God would send them a sign of his love, a person, a word, a moment of unexpected grace that reminds them life is still worth living. Carlo, you are called by many the patron of the internet, and I think there is something beautiful in that, because even in a world so filled with noise and distraction and sometimes darkness online, you manage to use that same space to point people toward Christ. Help those who are lost in the noise of this world, Carlo, whether it is the noise of screens or the noise of their own anxious minds, to find their way back to silence, to prayer, to the quiet voice of God that so often gets drowned out by everything else. Help me especially to make room for that silence in my own life, to turn off the distractions long enough to hear what God might be trying to say to me in this season of struggle. I want to thank you, Carlo, even in the midst of my asking, because gratitude has a way of opening the heart to receive what it is asking for. Thank you for your example of holiness lived out in ordinary teenage life, in classrooms and soccer games and family dinners, proving that sainthood is not reserved for monks in monasteries, but is possible for anyone who says yes to God with their whole heart. Thank you for showing that a life devoted to the Eucharist can be a life full of joy, full of friendship, full of laughter, not a life of gloom or restriction. Thank you for reminding the world, especially young people who feel unseen or unworthy, that they too can become saints, that holiness is not out of reach for them, that God delights in using the small and the ordinary to do extraordinary things. I ask you now, Carlo, to intercede for the specific healing I need in my life, the one I hold quietly in my heart as I pray these words. You already know what it is, even if I have not spoken it aloud. Carry it to Jesus. Ask Him, on my behalf, to touch that place of pain, that place of fear, that place of brokenness, and to bring His healing light into it. I trust that if it is according to His will, He will grant this healing in a way that draws me closer to Him, that strengthens my faith, that becomes a testimony not just for me but for others who are watching and wondering whether God is still in the business of miracles. I also surrender to you, Carlo, whatever it is I do not yet understand about my suffering. I do not ask to understand everything. I only ask for the grace to trust even in the not knowing. Help me to say, along with Job in the midst of his suffering, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Help me to say, along with Jesus in the garden, not my will but yours be done, even when that surrender costs me everything I thought I wanted. I know that trust like this is not built overnight. It is built prayer by prayer, tear by tear, moment by moment, of choosing faith over fear. So walk with me in that process, Carlo. Do not let me walk it alone. As I come toward the end of this prayer, I ask you, Carlo, to wrap your intercession around my entire life like a warm blanket on a cold night, covering every wound, every fear, every broken piece, and carrying it all gently into the presence of God. I ask for healing that reaches beyond my body, into my soul. I ask for hope that outlasts every disappointment life throws at me. I ask for restoration that rebuilds not just what was lost, but something even more beautiful than what existed before, the way God so often does, taking our broken pieces and creating something we could never have imagined on our own. I ask this through your intercession, Carlo, trusting in your closeness to Christ, trusting in the holiness you lived so fully in your short life, trusting that God delights in answering the prayers of His little saints on behalf of His struggling children. Saint Carlo Acutis, pray for me. Pray for my body that it may be healed. Pray for my mind that it may find peace. Pray for my heart that it may learn to hope again. Pray for my soul that it may draw ever closer to the God who made it. Pray for my relationships that they may be restored. Pray for my faith that it may burn as brightly as yours once did. Pray for everyone I love who is also suffering tonight, that they too may know the healing touch of Christ. Pray for this broken world, that it may find its way back to the God who is always waiting, always ready, always merciful. I place this prayer, and every hope contained within it, into your hands, Carlo, trusting that you will carry it faithfully to Jesus in the Eucharist, the highway to heaven that you so loved and so freely traveled. I believe that you hear me. I believe that you care. I believe that even now, from your place in glory, you are interceding for souls like mine who are simply trying to hold on, trying to keep believing, trying to keep hoping even when everything feels uncertain. Thank you, Carlo, for your life, for your witness, for your friendship with Christ that continues even now to touch hearts across the world. Thank you for being a bridge between heaven and this weary earth, a reminder that sanctity is possible, that youth and joy and holiness can exist together, that suffering does not have the final word, that love always, always wins in the end. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, I entrust this prayer to you, Saint Carlo Acutis, and through you, to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, who I believe hears every word, every tear, every whispered hope contained within it. Amen. And now do not simply close this page and let these words fade into the background of a busy life. If something inside you stirred while reading this, that stirring is worth honoring. Go to the Blessed Sacrament this week, even if it is only for 5 quiet minutes, and tell Jesus, in your own words, what you told him here. Speak Carlo's name when you pray. Ask him by name to walk with you, the way you would ask a friend for help, because that is exactly what he is. If you are sick, do not carry that burden in silence any longer. Ask someone to pray with you. Reach out to your parish. Take the small next step toward the care you need, whether that is medical, spiritual, or simply someone willing to sit with you in the hard moments. If you know someone else who is suffering tonight, someone whose name came to mind while you read this prayer, send it to them. Let them know they are not forgotten, that someone thought of them, that heaven has not stopped listening. Healing rarely arrives all at once in a single overwhelming moment. Far more often it arrives quietly, through a decision made today to keep praying, to keep hoping, to keep showing up even when it is hard. So let today be that decision. Light a candle if you have one. Whisper Carlo's name one more time, and take the next right step, trusting that you are walking it with a friend in heaven who has not and will not let go of your hand.